Observata lege plene, civis in legalibus, cibum turbe ordine, sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum, verbum carnem efficit, fitque sanguis Christi in merum, itsi sensus deficit, ad firmandum cor sincerum, sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui, et antiquum documentum novo cerat ritui, prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque, laus et jubilatio, salus honor virtus quoque, sit et benedictio, procedenti ab utroque, comparsit laudatio. Amen.
Pangelingua gloriosi corporis mysterium sanguinisque preciosi quem in mundi precium fructus ventris generosi rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status nobis natus, ex intacta Virgine, et in mundo conversatus, sparso verbis semine, sui moras incollatus, miro clausit ordine.
In supreme nocte cene recumbens cum fratribus, observata lege plene, civis in legalibus, Cibum turbe ordine, sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum, verbo carnem efficit, fitque sanguis Christi merum, et si sensus deficit, ad firmandum cor sincerum, sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui, et antiquum documentum novo cedat ritui. Prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque, laus et jubilatio, salus honor virtus quoque, sit et benedictio, procedenti ab utroque, comparsit laudatio. Amen.
Pangelingua gloriosi corporis mysterium sanguinisque preciosi quem in mundi pretium fructus ventris generosi rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status, nobis natus, ex intacta Virgine, et in mundo conversatus, sparso verbis semine, sui moras incollatus, miracles et ordine.
In supreme nocte cene recumbens cum fratribus observata lege plene cibis in legalibus cibum turbe ordine sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum, verbo carnem efficit, fitque sanguis Christi merum, et si sensus deficit, ad firmandum cor sincerum, sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui, et et antiquum documentum novo cedat ritui. Prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque, laus et jubilatio, salus honor virtus quoque, sit et benedictio, procedenti ab utroque, comparsit laudatio.
Pangelingua gloriosi corporis mysterium sanguinisque preciosi quem in mundi pretium fructus ventris generosi rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status nobis natus, ex intacta Virgine, et in mundo conversatus, sparso verbis semine, sui moras incolatus, miro clausit ordine.
In supreme nocte cene recumbens cum fratribus observata lege plene civis in legalibus cibum turbe ordine sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum, ergo carnem efficit, fitque sanguis Christi merum, et si sensus deficit, ad firmandum cor sincerum, sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui, et antiquum documentum novo cedat ritui. Prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque, laus et jubilatio, salus honor virtus quoque, sit et benedictio, procedenti ab utroque,
Angelingua gloriosi, corporis mysterium, sanguinisque preciosi, quem in mundi pretium, fructus ventris generosi, rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status, nobis natus, ex intacta Virgine, et in mundo conversatus, sparso verbis semine, sui moras incollatus, miro clausit ordine.
In supreme nocte cene, recumbens cum fratribus, observata lege plene, cibis in legalibus, cibum turber ordine, sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum, ergo carnem efficit, fitque sanguis Christi merum, ipsis sensus deficit, ad firmandum cor sincerum, sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui, et antiquum documentum novo cerat ritui. Prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque, laus et jubilatio, salus honor virtus quoque, sit et benedictio, procedenti ab utroque, comparsit laudatio.
Angelingua gloriosi, corporis mysterium, sanguinisque preciosi, quem in mundi pretium, fructus ventris generosi, rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status, nobis natus, ex intacta Virgine, et in mundo conversatus, sparso verbis semine, sui mora
supreme nocte cene, recumbens cum fratribus, observata lege plene, civis in legalibus, cibum turbe ordine, sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum, ergo carnem efficit, fitque sanguis Christi merum, et si sensus deficit, affirmandum cor sincerum, sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui, et antiquum documentum novo cedat ritui. Prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque, laus et jubilatio, salus honor virtus quoque, sit et benedictio, procedenti ab utroque, comparsit laudatio.
Pangelingua gloriosi corporis mysterium sanguinisque preciosi quem in mundi pretium fructus ventris generosi rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status nobis natus, ex intacta Virgine, et in mundo conversatus, sparso verbis semine, sui moras incollatus, miro clausit ordine.
In supreme nocte cene, recumbens cum fratribus, observata lege plene, civis in legalibus, cibum turbe ordine, sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum, ergo carnem efficit, fitque sanguis Christi merum, et si sensus deficit. ad firmandum cor sincerum sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui, et antiquum documentum novo cerat ritui. Prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque laus et jubilatio salus honor virtus quoque sit et benedictio procedenti ab utroque comparsit laudatio. Amen.
Pangelingua gloriosi corporis mysterium sanguinisque preciosi quem in mundi pretium fructus ventris generosi rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status nobis natus ex intacta Virgine et in mundo conversatus sparso verbis semine sui moras incollatus miro clausit ordine.
In supreme nocte cene recumbens cum fratribus observata lege plene cibis in legalibus cibum turber ordine sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum ergo carnem efficit fitque sanguis Christi merum et si sensus deficit ad firmandum cor sincerum sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui, et antiquum documentum novo cerat ritui. Prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque laus et jubilatio salus sit et benedictio, procedenti ab utroque, comparsit laudatio.
Pangelingua gloriosi corporis mysterium sanguinisque preciosi quem in mundi pretium fructus ventris generosi Rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status, nobis natus, ex intacta Virgine, et in mundo conversatus, sparso verbis semine, sui moras incollatus, miro clausit ordine.
In supreme nocte cene recumbens cum fratribus observata lege plene civis in legalibus cibum turbe ordine sedat suis manibus
Verbum caro panem verum, ergo carnem effici.
Whoops. Okay, well, here I am. Here you are. Thanks for coming. I enjoyed the little pre-show chat. And okay, I guess it's time to start. Again, thanks for showing up. Now, as you can tell by the fact that I engage in the chat, I also read all the comments. And so before I really start today's show, I wanted to respond to a very thoughtful comment that was on the last show, about the last show. It was in reference to the horribleness of the Aztec religion and of all of the human sacrifice there. And basically the commenter asked, those Aztec priests thought they were serving God. So were they really doing something wrong? And as a matter of fact, he then went on to relate it to Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son Isaac, which of course is at the center of the whole Jewish Catholic connection. So I just wanted to say a few little comments. First of all, there are always going to be mysteries which we do not fully understand about God and why he does things the way he does. And the biggest one of those mysteries, I'm going to turn down the volume a bit because I see that I'm going over the top there of the little meter. Bear with me. Okay. The chief one of those problems that we're never going to really get entirely to the bottom of is why God has arranged things with as much suffering as he has, and with as much unfairness as he has, or at least what looks to us like unfairness. And I can say on behalf of every single one of you listening, as well as me, we are evidence of that unfairness, because just compare our state to somebody who was born in one of those little shanty towns in a garbage dump in Mexico, or for that matter, in Iraq, in a village or something. We have been very, very, very blessed, or India, in dirt poor poverty, I forgot what the name is, but in one of the low caste in India, the untouchables. God certainly seems to be really unfair. And one of the aspects, he isn't unfair. I'm just saying that we're not going to understand the fairness of it. And we can spend our time presuming that we should be able to understand everything. And if we're not able to understand everything about God, well, we're just not going to believe in him. So basically, we can focus on reasons for disbelief, so to speak. And you know that the enemy is going to be whispering in our ear, trying to get us to focus on reasons for disbelief. Or we can focus on reasons for belief, which is the reason for this series that I'm doing right now. So we can choose, really, to build our faith by looking at all of the proofs for God's existence. Or we can try to undermine our faith by looking at all the reasons, all the problems we have understanding why God does what he does. And there's a kind of a third choice, which I think is actually the ultimate good choice, which is we can reverently and respectfully, prayerfully ask God to shed light on the mystery that's bothering us. And if we do that, then in time he will shed light on it. Clearly, the biggest one of those mysteries is what's called theodicy, which is the mystery of evil in the world. We do have the wonderful evidence of Jesus himself having undergone his passion and death. In other words, being God himself having been on the receiving end of the worst mistreatment that can be meted out on earth. So that's a very valuable data point. And as far as what our behavior should be, we have the example of Jesus, God himself, who actually came to earth to give us an example for our behavior. And finally, I'm just going to, because this is an area of a great deal of interest to me, point out, as I pointed out in some previous shows, I'll put in a little ad. I have a rather long talk on the YouTube channel called The Demonic and Pagan Religions, which is all about this. But the fact remains that the existence of demonic religions and the fact that people are born into demonic religions is really at the nub of this difficult to understand mystery about the strength of evil. You can just look at anyone who's born into a demonic religion. I have the witness testimony of a Yanomamo shaman in that video. He didn't have a chance. He grew up worshiping demons. You probably know that I think that, like one of the 3 largest religions in the world today is satanic. And if you worship the god of this religion, you're actually worshiping Satan. And of course, if you're born into it, you're going to take it seriously at first. And the fact that you're worshiping Satan is going to, instead of the Holy Spirit being placed in your heart with his fruits of gentleness, love, patience, kindness, and so forth, evil spirits will be placed in the palace of your heart, as the shaman called it after his conversion, and they will fill you with hatred and vengefulness and so forth. Did those people who burned down or tried to burn down the cathedral in Nantes yesterday, did they think they were serving God? Were they good guys because they were simply doing what they thought God wanted? I don't think so, but I leave that as an open question. My point is that there are going to be these open questions, these mysteries that we're not going to get to the bottom of. And please don't let them undermine your faith, because that's what the enemy wants you to do. Finally, I'm just going to read a short passage from the book of Job. You all know the story of Job. All these terrible things happened to him, even though he was a good guy. And he keeps complaining to God about why. There has to be a reason why these things happen to me. And finally, after 37 chapters of Job complaining to God, God finally speaks and gives him the answer, and I think is really the answer for all of us. Then, this is chapter 38. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up your loins like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Were you there when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched a line out upon it? Or what word spaces sunk into, or who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Or who shut in the sea with doors when it burst forth from the womb, when I made clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band, and prescribed bounds for it, and set bars and doors, and said, thus far shall you come and no farther, and here shall your proud waves be stayed. Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place, that it may take hold of the skirts of the earth, and the wicked be shaken out of it, and on and on and on and on. So let's please remember who we are, and who God is, and what our right relationship with him is. Which it's fine to question in the sense of wanting to understand, but it's not fine to question in the sense of putting God in the dock, like he's the defendant that you're cross-examining. I'm not saying this to the commentator. I'm very grateful for that comment. It just gave me an opportunity to go into this rap. So, okay, today's show. Now, as you could see from the opening screen, it is Eucharistic Miracles. Now, before I launch in, it's physical Eucharistic Miracles. I'm narrowing my focus to physically verifiable, scientifically examinable Eucharistic miracles. There are other categories of Eucharistic miracles that I may use on a future show. And I just want to mention them now so it doesn't look like I'm sliding them. One is a number of saints who survived only on the Eucharist as their only nourishment for months or years, or in one case at least even decades. I'm thinking of Martha Robin and Catherine Emmerich also. I believe Adrian von Speyer also. Any number of saints actually who survived only on the Eucharist. In some cases this was scientifically verified in the sense that they were under careful watch by skeptics. Anne Catherine Emmerich was put in a hospital for a period of time just so that the circumstances could be fully controlled and they could verify that in fact she was getting no food and so forth. So that is another kind of Eucharistic miracle. And another kind of Eucharistic miracle, which is really neat and happened quite a bit, there are a number of them that are recounted and documented, are Eucharistic miracles where the intercession of the Eucharist stopped invading armies, stopped tidal waves from coming to a particular shoreline or village, stopped raging fires in its tracks, and so forth. And then there are also, first of all, and this is also the biggest Eucharistic miracle, which of course is the transubstantiation itself, which is invisible to our eyes, and therefore can't be used as a proof of the faith to a skeptic, but nonetheless is of course the central Eucharistic miracle. So let me start the show. This whole show, I hope, is in honor of the Blessed Sacrament, with a quote from St. Thomas Aquinas, just underlining, you probably all know this, it's probably coming out of your ears, but here's the idea behind transubstantiation, if I can be so presumptuous as to put it that way, which is that when the priest consecrates the host, the substance of the host turns into the flesh and blood of Christ. However, what's called the accidents of the host, that is, its external attributes that are not part of its essence, not part of what it really is, but are part of its appearance. The technical term for that is accidents. Doesn't mean like a car accident. It means something that is there but doesn't have to be there. The accidents remain the accidents of the bread and the wine. So the substance is transformed, but in the normal case, the accidents, you can say the appearance, is not changed. However, in these Eucharistic miracles, and I'm going to spend the rest of the show talking about, the accidents were changed into the accidents of the flesh and blood of Christ. In other words, the external attributes of the consecrated host turned into the external attributes of Christ's flesh and blood. So that's actually really a small miracle compared to the big miracle of the substance being transformed. But you're not going to make any headway with skeptics by pointing out the reality of the transubstantiation in its substance, but you are by pointing out the reality in its accidents or in its external appearances. Now, I guess I'll just stop there. No, I guess I won't stop there. Let me just read the short quote from St. Thomas Aquinas about this. It's just a very small snippet. He's got pages about this. The presence of Christ's true body and blood in the sacrament cannot be detected by sense nor understanding, but by faith alone, which rests upon divine authority. It belongs to the perfection of faith, which concerns his humanity, just as it does his Godhead. According to John 14, you believe in God, believe also in me. And since faith is of things unseen, as Christ shows us his Godhead invisibly, so also in this sacrament he shows us his flesh in an invisible manner. This is like really cool when you think about it, because of course when God came to earth, manifested as Jesus, he hid his divinity, right? He only showed, people could think he was just a man. It required faith in things unseen to recognize Christ in his Godhead when he was on earth. In a similar manner, in the Eucharist, it requires faith to see his flesh and blood under the appearance of the bread. Just as he veiled his divinity as a man on earth, he veils his true presence in the Eucharist. So there's a kind of parallel there. Back to St. Thomas Aquinas. It is evident to sense that all the accidents of the bread and wine, that means all of the external aspects, the external non-essential aspects of the bread and wine, remain after the consecration. All this is reasonably done by divine providence. First of all, because it is not customary but horrible for men to eat human flesh and to drink blood. And therefore Christ's flesh and blood are set before us to be partaken of under the species of those things which are more commonly used by men, namely bread and wine. Secondly, lest this sacrament might be derided by unbelievers if we were to eat our Lord under his own species. Right? That would result in a lot of anti-Catholic sentiment if we were to be seen eating flesh and drinking blood. Thirdly, that while we receive our Lord's body and blood invisibly, this may redound to the merit of faith, which is probably the bottom line. There's no merit. See, excuse me for saying this, but I don't feel like I have the merit of faith like most of you have, because I didn't require. Remember when St. Thomas, when Jesus appeared before St. Thomas, after St. Thomas said, I have to stick my finger in his side before I'll believe that Jesus resurrected. And then Jesus appears to St. Thomas and says, okay, big talker, now stick your finger in my side. And he says, you see, and so you believe, but blessed are they who have not seen and believe. So our belief in the real presence in the Eucharist is an occasion for merit. Our belief in the truth of the Catholic faith is an occasion of merit. I cheated because of my initial theophany, so I don't actually have to rely on faith in a normal sense. I can rely on my experience and my memory of my experience. So I don't have the merit that would normally belong there, or would normally come along with believing in the Catholic faith. Okay, so on to our first... Oh, no, even before, I haven't even gotten to the first miracle yet. Before I get to the first miracle, let me show you why... Whoops. Let me show you why it's hard to choose even the physical miracles for this show. What you're seeing scrolling before you is a list of Eucharistic miracles. I think there are about 100 on this list. And so what I've done for this show is I've only chosen Eucharistic miracles from like the last 50 or 60 years. So Eucharistic miracles that have been subjected to skeptical scientific investigation. So I passed by some very notable ones, and including, for instance, Lanciano, which was on the opening screen, in favor of, I think the first one that I deal with was in, I don't know, maybe in the we'll find out as we go along, but certainly late 20th century. Oops, there's still a few bugs in the system there. So anyway, I don't know why that happened, but really there were like over 100. So yes. And the idea being that, at least for this episode in the show, I want this to have weight for skeptics. In other words, I know that none of you guys are skeptics, but I don't want anyone to have to take anyone's word just because they have no reason to lie and they're honest people. I want, to be able to point to scientifically verifiable facts. Notice I say scientifically verifiable facts. I'll repeat myself from an earlier show. Scientifically means evidence-based, data-based. At least I think it should mean that. It should not mean reproducible in a laboratory. Some people take it to mean reproducible in a laboratory, and therefore these Eucharistic miracles aren't scientific. However, all of the ones that I'm going to talk about today have been subjected to very scientific examination. So, okay. First one, Betania. Betania in Venezuela. Okay. Let me read a description of the miracle first. The Eucharistic miracle occurred during the midnight Mass of December 8th, 1991. That's pretty cool. That's the Immaculate Conception at the Marian Shrine of Finca Betania in Venezuela. Father Audrey, the chaplain of the shrine, describes it thus. After having consumed one of the pieces of the large host, which I had divided into 4 parts, I returned them to the paten. A little later I looked down toward the paten, and I could not believe what I saw. One of the pieces of the host that I had divided was showing a red spot, and from it a red substance began to emanate, similar to the manner in which blood escapes from a wound. After Mass, I took the host and preserved it safely in the sacristy of the shrine. The next day, I went to see the host and verified that some blood continued to flow, that a little later began to dry. However, still today, the blood appears as fresh. The host of the miracle was subjected to special studies by the then Bishop of Las Tecas, His Excellency Most Reverend Pio Bello Ricardo, and the results confirmed that the blood was human blood of type AB positive, which matches the blood type found on the cloth of the Shroud of Turin, and also matches the blood type in the host of the Eucharistic miracle of Lanciano that occurred in 750 AD, the same blood type, AB positive. All of the Eucharistic miracles, the Shroud of Turin, the Lanciano, 8th century. They didn't know about blood types then. All of the samples of blood have the same blood type. Since then, the host has been an object of veneration and devotion on the part of thousands of pilgrims coming from the whole world. Now, here's the kicker. Just wait till you see this little film clip. Young faithful from New Jersey, Daniel Sanford, went on a pilgrimage to the convent to see the bleeding host, and he was able to film another miraculous episode of it. Here are his words. On the 12th of November of 1998, I went on pilgrimage to Betania with a prayer group, and they took us to see the miraculous host of Betania in the chapel of the Augustinian Sisters of Los Teques. Our spiritual director, Father Mazzarella, celebrated the Mass. After Mass ended, he opened the door of the tabernacle, which contained the host of the miracle. With great astonishment, I saw that the host was as though in flames, and there was a pulsating heart that was bleeding in its center. I saw this for about 30 seconds or so. Then the host returned to normal. I was able to film a part of this miracle with my video camera. So, here we go, folks. Whoops. That's not here we go, folks. Well, there you see it. The host in the reliquary. And there you see the Adoration Chapel. And there you see the pulsating, illuminated, pulsating like a human heart, obviously, host. There you see it with just the blood that appeared on it. Okay, well, I feel like I could now say thanks for showing up. See me again on my next show. I feel like I could stop now with that. Wow. Wow. Of course, if any of you have not seen that, if you just search on YouTube for Eucharistic Miracle Betania or something like that, I'm sure you'll find it. Now, first, I've just got to say, I don't want to say what a God we have, because there's only one God. But what can I say? How much must Jesus love us? I mean, he not only created us and arranged heaven for us, he not only came to earth and suffered the passion and died for us, he not only left us the Blessed Sacrament and Holy Communion and his real presence available at will at every Mass, but he's even also left us these signs. I mean, really, it's like, not only that, but this, not only that, but this, not only that, but this. Dayenu, if any of you are Jewish converts, Dayenu, it would have been enough, but he did so much more. It would have been enough, but he did so much more. That's actually sort of a central prayer in the Passover Seder. It recounts the miracles that God did for the Israelites leaving Egypt, you know. If he had only parted the Red Sea for us, but not fed us with manna in the wilderness, it would have been enough, but he did so much more. If he'd only fed us with manna in the wilderness, but not brought us to the promised land, it would have been enough, but he did so much more. And there are about 30 of these, and we have even more of them as Catholics. And of course, that whole story of the Exodus from Egypt is just a prefigurement anyway of the Catholic Church. Anyway, it's got to stay on track or else I'll never end these shows. Okay, Buenos Aires. I do want to talk about the Buenos Aires Eucharistic miracle. First of all, it is very, it's also in the scientific age. It's the main one is 1996. It was when Bergoglio was the Bishop of Buenos Aires, who's now Pope Francis, which is one reason it's interesting. But it was also subjected to very rigorous scientific examination. So let me first read the account, and then I will pull up a series of slides of evidence of it, so to speak. Or maybe I'll put up a picture of it. Maybe I'll put up a picture of it now as a little bit of a teaser. Let me just find one that's I might as well use. Okay, I'll put that one up as a bit of a teaser. That, of course, is the host with that's partly turned into human muscle tissue and human blood. I can't talk over that. I can't talk over Jesus, so I have to pull down that slide. Sorry. Okay. The parish of St. Mary in Buenos Aires actually had 3 Eucharistic miracles. One in 92, one in 94, and one in 96. I'll just talk about the one in 96. This is the account given by Professor Castagnon regarding the Eucharistic miracle that occurred in 1996 in the parish of St. Mary in Buenos Aires. As a matter of fact, I can pull up a picture. You don't have Professor Castagnon talking to you now, but you can have a picture of what it looks like if he were talking to you instead of me. So there you have that. On August, these are his words though, so I'll leave that picture up. On August 15th, 1996, a faithful received the consecrated host in his hands in order to take communion, but he let it inadvertently fall to the ground. The priest, following the directives of the church, put the host in a vessel full of water, which he placed in the tabernacle, waiting for it to dissolve. That's the proper way to dispose of a host if you have to. August 26th, the tabernacle was reopened to get the vessel with the fallen host, and it was observed that it was not dissolved and showed several reddish stains that became larger every day. The priest of the parish went immediately to the Archbishop of Buenos Aires to recount what had happened. This is Archbishop Bergoglio. It was decided to wait before proceeding with the investigations, which happened in 1999, so 3 years later. On October 6, 1999, I went to Buenos Aires and interviewed the 5 priests who were witnesses of the event. On October 21st, I went to the Forensic Analytical Genetics Laboratory in San Francisco, which was to perform the analysis of the samples I had brought. Okay, so right away, he went to the Forensic Analytical Genetics Laboratory, which is forensics laboratory. Okay, so this is science. This isn't superstition, and this isn't the faithful who believe anything. This is a forensic laboratory, right? You all watch CSI Miami or whatever those shows are, right? On January 28th of 2000, they found some fragments of human DNA in the samples. It was human blood. In March of 2000, I was informed that also the famous legal histopathologist Dr. Robert Lawrence, one of the top experts in the world in tissues, would participate in the analysis. Dr. Lawrence studied the samples and found in them human skin and white blood cells. In 2001, I went with my samples to Professor Linoli, who identified the white blood cells and said to me that the samples corresponded to heart tissue. The results obtained from the samples were similar to those of the studies performed on the host of the miracle of Lanciano. In 2002, we sent the sample to Professor John Walker at the University of Sydney in Australia, who confirmed that the sample showed muscle cells and intact white blood cells. And everybody knows that white blood cells outside our body disintegrate after 15 minutes. And in this case, 6 years had already passed. But the white blood cells were still there, even though 6 years had passed, and they disintegrate after 15 minutes after being removed from the body. On March 2nd, 2004, we went to the greatest expert in cardiac pathologies and forensic medicine of the heart, Professor Frederick Zugibe of New York at Columbia University. Okay? So if any of you are racist, I know none of you are racist, but this is Columbia University, okay, in New York. So it's not exactly a hotbed of Catholic faith. Let me see if I can find, I have a picture of him somewhere. There, I'll put him up for a moment. That is Professor Zugibe, cardiology, forensic pathology at Columbia University in New York. The professor, this is Zugibe now, did not know that the sample I had brought to him came from a consecrated host. I'll go back to this. The sample which you brought me, Professor Zugibe said to me, is the muscle of the heart of the myocardium. It is precisely the left ventricle, and he confirmed that my patient had suffered a lot. Because he didn't know it was from a consecrated host. He thought it was from, Professor Castagnon's patient. He confirmed that my patient had suffered a lot. Then I asked him, "Doctor, how do you know my patient suffered a lot?" He answered me, "Because your patient has some thrombi. At certain moments he could not breathe. Oxygen did not reach him. He labored and suffered much because every aspiration was painful." Probably they gave him a blow at the level of the chest. Moreover, the heart showed dynamic activity, that is, was alive, at the moment when you brought me the sample. Why, I asked him. Because we found some intact white blood cells, and white blood cells are transported only by the blood, and thus if white blood cells are here, it is because at the moment in which you brought me the sample, it was pulsating. The professor then asked to whom this sample belonged, and when you told him it came from a consecrated host, he exclaimed, "I do not believe it." He was greatly moved. Professor Zugibe said to me again, at the moment in which you brought me this sample, this heart was alive. His report was sent out on March 26, 2005, 5.5 years after the start of the studies, and the conclusions were, quote, "They are tissues of the heart undergoing degenerative changes of the myocardium, and these changes are due to the fact that the cells are inflamed, and it is the left ventricle of the heart." On March 17th, I brought the results to Cardinal Jorge Maria Bergoglio, now known as Pope Francis. As a matter of fact, since I just mentioned that, let me try to find. Oh yes, here's a picture I found of. I think you'll recognize the shorter man in that picture. Is Pope Francis? Would have been in I don't know, about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and that is the priest for whom the miracle occurred, so to speak. The priest who was celebrating Mass at the time of the miracle. He is Father Pizet, P-E-Z-E-T, Pizet, with Pope Francis, or with Archbishop Bergoglio at the time. So let me go through now the show and tell slides. Is he Jewish? Dr. Frederick Zugibe. I would guess he's Eastern European, actually. I have no idea, but I would not naturally identify that as a Jewish name. Okay, I'm just gonna go through now. So here we have the host, which was placed in water, that's why you see it in water there, and yet, instead of dissolving completely, this blood and muscle tissue formed in the middle of the host, or became apparent in the middle of the host. And here we have, this is simply a close-up, a little bit gruesome, but there you see on the outside edges, you see the yellow portion, or ivory portion would be the host, which is still under the accidents of being a wafer. And then, of course, the red is the blood-soaked host and the muscle tissue, and so forth. And here you have the I don't know what they are, lab technicians or doctors carefully removing a fragment of the heart muscle for examination. And in fact, here is that fragment once it was removed in a little test tube to be sent to the laboratory to be tested. And here's the relic of the host that was transformed into flesh. And oh yes, myocardium. That's actually, you remember, it came up in this report. It comes up in a number of the reports. It's just a fancy word for heart muscle, actually. So you can see that entire, it's kind of the pinkish red that is around the outside of the heart and runs up into the inside of the heart. Of course, the heart is mostly a muscle, right? That's its job, is to go and pump the blood. And so that's that outer surface and that separating muscle that separates the two ventricles is presumably the myocardium. And I already showed you Dr. Zagibi in his laboratory. And so here is, whoops, I don't know why this happens. There you have the tabernacle where the relic of the miracle is preserved. I don't know which miracle that is, whether that's the 92 miracle or the 96 miracle. And finally, you have the church. Just obviously kind of ordinary looking brick church in Buenos Aires. So there you have the little virtual pilgrimage to the Buenos Aires Eucharistic miracle. So let me go on to the next Eucharistic miracle. I have about 6 of these for this show, and I had to just pick 6 out of, and I don't want to say an endless number, but a large number. But as I said, I picked the ones that would be the hardest for a skeptic to scoff at because they were all, in the last 25 years or so. Okay, Tixtla, Mexico. Okay, I'm going to give a little digression. I just have to do this. I'm putting myself in the mind of that skeptic, which might have been me, 40 years ago or something. And they're going to say, yeah, but all these people, the priests who come up with these things, they're priests, they're Catholics, they believe this stuff, so maybe, we shouldn't trust them because they're biased. How come this doesn't happen to an atheist or something? That is such a ridiculous, argument. But I'm sure the skeptic sites, will make that argument. But first of all, they couldn't make this fraudulently, okay? They couldn't weave together a host with human muscle tissue, okay? And one of them, the Polish one, was under an electron microscope. It showed the cells morphing into each other. So it couldn't even be faked, even if it was going to be faked. It couldn't be faked that the white blood cells are still alive. right? If they die 15 minutes after the heart stops pumping. So stuff couldn't be faked, even if it wanted to be faked. And as far as the fact that the witnesses are all Catholics, what other circumstances are you going to have a Eucharistic miracle occur at, right? You're not going to have it occur, at a mosque during a Friday afternoon service. G.K. Chesterton has the analogy that if you don't believe that people who are very angry see red when they're very angry, and I believe it because it happened to me once. Before my conversion, I got so angry I literally saw red. I'm actually very grateful that I did not physically get violent under the circumstances. I did consider it, but it was really in my very pre-conversion days. But I saw red, and there's a scientific explanation for why it happens. But in any case, you have all these people who testify that they got very angry and saw red. You can't go up to them and say, yeah, well, your testimony doesn't count because you were angry at the time. We have to find somebody who isn't angry to testify that you see red when you get very angry. Right? That would be like really stupid. But that's what these skeptics are doing when they say, we're going to discount all this evidence because it comes from faithful Catholics. Okay. Back to Mexico. I see a chat there. I want to respond to it. We must value our Catholic faith. Amen, sister. But it's more than that. Because the Catholic faith, first of all, it's not ours. You know that. I mean, we have the privilege of living within it. But the Catholic faith is just a funny term for the system that God came up with for the best possible relationship between God and man for the entire period between birth and death, and the best possible eternity with God for all eternity. He set up the system. He set up the system wanting it to be for every human being. Catholic means universal. It's universal. It's the system that he established for mankind, period. We are incredibly blessed and privileged to have been born into it or invited into it and to partake of this ultimate relationship with God. But it is the universal ultimate relationship with God that goes by the name of the Catholic faith. I hope that makes sense. It's somehow very important to me. It's not, because I was Jewish, and being Jewish makes you different from other people in a sense. You're a different, it's like being Irish or something. It's an ethnic group. Being Catholic is not a separate group. Being Catholic is simply being in the relationship that God wants for all of mankind, which revolves around the Catholic Church and the sacraments of the Catholic Church and the Catholic faith. Okay, back to Mexico. Tixtla, Mexico. I'll read a little short description. Let me see what the slide is going to look like. Actually, no, I'm going to have to show the slide. That is the Eucharistic miracle of Tixtla. And let me read the account. I'll leave that up for a while. On October 12th, 2013, okay, I'm reading the account. Okay, the miracle happened October 21st, 2006. Okay, in 2013, the bishop of the diocese of Chilpancingo, Chilapa, which is where Tixtla is, announced that the Eucharistic miracle that had occurred in 2006 was recognized officially by the Church as a miracle. In the letter we read, the manifestation brings to us a marvelous sign of the love of God that confirms the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. In my role as bishop of the diocese, I recognize the supernatural character of the series of events relating to the bleeding host of Tixtla. I declare the case a divine sign. So that's the official pronouncement. Okay, so here is what happened. On October 21st, 2006, a reddish substance was noted from a consecrated host during the Mass. The bishop of the place, Most Reverend Alejo Zavala Castro, convened a theological commission of investigation And in 2009, he invited Dr. Richard Castañón Gomez to take on the leadership of the program of scientific research, whose purpose was the fact of verifying the said event. They chose him. He's the same professor. Then they chose him because they were aware that he had conducted the studies on the Buenos Aires Eucharistic miracle. I'm trying to skip some in the interest of time. Anyway, during the distribution of communion, and obviously before distributing this host, a religious sister who was to the left of the priest noticed that the host on the patent that she was about to take to give communion to a lady had begun to effuse a reddish substance. Then the scientific research, which was conducted between 2009 and 2012, that's when the case was open, so to speak, came to the following conclusions, which were presented on May 25th, 2013, during the course of an international symposium held by the Diocese of Chilpancingo. And okay, so let me now go back to some of the fun slides. You know what I'm going to do? It's not a fun slide. Maybe it's even better. It's a video presentation in Spanish. I don't speak any Spanish. Some of you do speak Spanish. I can understand a little bit of Spanish just from other languages like French. So let me pull up the video, and it's in Spanish, but you'll see the scientific investigation, and then I will read in English the bullet points of the results of that scientific investigation. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope it works. Whoops, wrong. No, this is, oh, I know what I do wrong. Okay, this is what I do wrong.
En México, en la pequeña ciudad de Tixtla, un luminoso día de 1996, una hostia sangre. En el año 2009, un correspondiente. El estudio nos tomó desde noviembre de 2009 hasta el 22 de noviembre de 2012. He recorrido muchos laboratorios del mundo, consultando a científicos de alta capacidad y destreza, y hemos llegado a las siguientes conclusiones. La sustancia rojiza encontrada en la hostia que tuvo efusión de líquido rojizo en Tixtla corresponde a sangre humana. Dos estudios realizados en dos laboratorios distintos y países distintos en años diferentes confirman que el tipo de sangre es AB. La sangre, ¿cómo puede suceder que debajo de sangre ya coagulada durante años exista sangre fresca? Células mesenquimatosas, unas células sumamente importantes que pueden asumir.
Oh, did I?
Laboratorio de histopatología determinó también, después de pruebas de inmunohistoquímica, que el tejido corresponde a corazón.
Well, I don't know why that was a little bit messed up, but you got the point of the scientific laboratory-based investigation. Here is the slide from the final results, and let me read the results of that investigation that were presented during the course of an international symposium in the diocese in 2013. Number one, the reddish substance analyzed corresponds to blood in which there are hemoglobin and DNA of human origin. Okay, human. 2 studies conducted by eminent forensic experts with different methodologies have shown that the substance originates from the interior of the host, excluding the hypothesis that someone could have placed it from the exterior. Let me take off that slide for the moment. The blood type is AB, again, AB, similar to the one found in the host of Lanciano and the Holy Shroud of Turin. I forgot to mention that. That's also type AB. Number 4, a microscopic analysis of magnification and penetration reveals that the superior part of the blood has been coagulated since October 2006, but the underlying internal layers reveal in February 2010 the presence of fresh blood. Number 5, they also found intact white blood cells, red cells, and active macrophages that engulf lipids. The tissue in question appears lacerated and with recovery mechanisms, exactly as occurs in a living tissue. So again, somehow, miraculously, the tissue isn't dead. Number 6, a further histopathological analysis determines the presence of protein structures in a state of deterioration, suggesting mesenchymal cells, very specialized cells, characterized by an elevated biophysiological dynamism. I have no idea what that means. The immunohistochemical studies reveal that the tissue found corresponds to the muscle of the heart, the myocardium again. On account of the scientific results and the conclusions reached by the theological committee, the bishop, His Eminence Alejo Zavala Castro, announced, quote, "The event does not have a natural explanation. It does not have a paranormal origin. It is not traceable to manipulation of the enemy. In other words, it is a miracle." There. Boy, are you guys getting bored yet? I've only gone through 3. I think I have another 3 or something. Oh, here is a picture of the bishop, by the way. I believe that's with the miraculous host in the monstrance, but I'm not 100% sure. However, it is definitely Bishop Castro. It is the bishop of Tixtla. And okay, now this is a really good one. Like the others weren't really good ones. Okay, let me bring myself back here. Okay, on to Guadalajara. On to Guadalajara. I wish I had known about this when I was in Guadalajara. Anyway, this one is from 2013, I believe. Okay, so another very contemporary one. And let me read the account. Maybe I'll show you the opening slide first. There is the priest who was celebrating. He's the pastor of the parish when it happened. Father Dolores, Father Lolo. I guess that's the diminutive for Dolores. And there is in the ciborium, or paten, I suppose, is in fact the miraculous host. Let me zoom in, so to speak, on that. There we have it. Okay, so let me read the story. If you guys have the faith, you can go home now. Watch TV. It's all, I don't want to say it's all the same story over and over again. Maybe I shouldn't have taken like 6. But I don't want to beat you guys over the head. I want to beat all the people who aren't watching over the head with the fact that we're the scientific ones. You guys are the dogmatists. I mean, you skeptics or non-Catholics or non-believers. You refuse to believe the evidence because of your faith in atheism, your faith in rejection of the Catholic faith, whatever. We're scientific. We're going on the evidence. You guys are refusing to acknowledge the evidence because of your pre-existing beliefs. Okay. We are not believing in the Catholic faith because of our beliefs. We're believing in them on the basis of the evidence. You guys are refusing to believe on the basis of your faith, your dogma. Okay, so anyway, that's, everyone can go home now. Another 3 Eucharistic miracles to go. I probably started with the most exciting one in a sense, which was the pulsating heart. But anyway, okay, I'll read the Guadalajara one. Monsignor Chances, okay, the pastor of the Mary Mother of the Church parish, that's Father Lolo, that I showed you the picture of, said that on July 24th, this is 2013, while he was kneeling in prayer before the Blessed Sacrament, he saw a flash of light and heard a voice. Ring the bells so that everyone comes. I will pour blessings upon those present and the entire day. This is the voice that spoke to Father Lolo. Take your small tabernacle for private adoration to the parish altar and put the large monstrance next to the small tabernacle. Don't open the tabernacle until 3 in the afternoon, not before. I will perform a miracle in the Eucharist. The miracle that will take place will be called the miracle of the Eucharist in the incarnation of love together with our Mother and Lady. Copy the image that I will give you now and show it to others. The father said that after hearing the voice, he could only say, My Lord, I am your servant. Let your will be done. When local people gathered at 3 p.m., he recounted that with local people gathered at 3 p.m., as the voice had told him, he approached the tabernacle, and upon opening it, the host consecrated by our Lord Jesus Christ was covered in blood. According to the priest, the voice also told him to establish an adoration chapel and to allow any scientific study necessary to confirm the miracle. There you have it. The priest said that a team of experts will be assembled to investigate whether there is a scientific explanation for the phenomenon, and so forth. I actually don't have the conclusions. I don't know what happened with the investigation. Sorry, I dropped the ball on that. So all I have is the pictures. So let me go back to the pictures. There you just have a close-up of the hosts in the on the paten with the Eucharistic miracle. And yeah, so that's really that. That's it. That's Guadalajara. Okay, on to Poland. How come these miracles all take places in countries where I don't have a chance of pronouncing the people's names right? Anyway. Okay. From Spanish names to Polish names. But okay, so this took place in see, I can't even pronounce the name of the place. Sokolka? I'm sure that's not right. My wife speaks Polish. She's not here. I can't ask her. Sokolka, Poland in 2008. Again, all of this stuff, this isn't medieval superstitious stuff. This is CSI Miami stuff. What's it called? Cold case files stuff. Okay, I'll read the account. It's from Sokolka, Poland, 2008. On October 12, 2008, during the Holy Mass of 8:30 a.m., celebrated by young vicar Philip Zordowski, during communion, unknowingly, the host fell from the hands of one of the priests. A woman kneeling, ready to receive the host, makes him notice it. The priest remains paralyzed from fright, and believing it was dirty, places it in a small silver vessel, which contains the water utilized by priests to wash their fingers after distributing communion. at the end of the Mass. That's what they used to have before, never mind, before they had the disinfectant. I'm sorry. That's another topic, but anyways, I'm sorry. I shouldn't go off on these hobby horses. Anyway, so he placed it in this small silver vessel. Now, I will explain this a little bit because we've lost it, so I just want to explain it. Some of you know I usually go to a Tridentine Mass, or at least I'm a member of an FSSP parish that celebrates the Tridentine Mass. I entered the church via Tridentine Masses because the first Masses were at a Carthusian monastery. It's essentially a Tridentine Mass and so forth. The idea is that the host is the real presence of Christ. And therefore, only the priest's, only anointed fingers, only the priest's hands can even touch the host. Okay, no layperson ever touches the host with their hands. I believe deacons are allowed to touch the host with their hands, and priests. So that's why this communion on the tongue. It has to go straight onto your tongue. Now, the priest, after he consecrates, most of you guys know this better than me, after he consecrates the host, right? He holds it up and consecrates it. He can't separate, I guess it's his thumb and forefinger that he holds the host with. He can't separate them until he's purified them, because the host has particles on it. Particles may have come off the host onto his fingers. So he has to hold those fingers closed until after the distribution of the host, he washes them in this water in a special little silver vessel, so that if there are any particles that are then in that water, they are properly treated. The altar rail has a cloth on top, so that if the host falls, it falls on the cloth that picks up the particles, and then the cloth is treated in a way that respects the real presence that might be there in the particles. Do you see what I mean? Every step in the process acknowledges that it's in the nature of the wafer, the accidents of the wafer, to have little dust particles come off, and the real presence is in those dust particles. And that's why everything is treated so incredibly carefully. And of course, only the priest, perhaps also a deacon, purifies the vessels afterwards, and they are washed with water, which is then drunk by the priest, right? Because it's like he's receiving communion, because there are going to be particles there. And there are particles there because I've served these masses, and you see the particles on the brightly polished metal paten. Not only that before water is poured in the chalice so that the priest can consume any little bit of wine that's still in the chalice. No, I've got that backwards. Before water is poured over the priest's fingers to get the particles off of his fingers into the chalice. I had messed up a couple of details here. I'm not a priest. You pour wine over the priest's fingers as a sign of respect for the real presence. And then water is poured over the priest's fingers, the fingers having been held shut since he consecrated the host. They're now over the chalice, so that those particles, this I had wrong when I started on this little rap, so that the particles that were on his fingers go in the chalice. And then when his fingers have had the wine poured over them and then the water poured over them, and he's rubbed them like this while the water's pouring over them to make sure that any little crumbs or any particles get off, then he drinks from the chalice to consume those particles, you see. So the entire process is respectful of the real presence. That's not the case in most contemporary parishes today, and I'll just leave it at that. If you receive in the hand, I have seen particles in my hand after receiving in the hand. They're going to be particles there. 500 people are streaming by for communion. What happens to those particles? That's the real presence, okay? I'm not suggesting you do this, but I lick, when I do have to receive in the hand, I lick the palm of my hand in case there are any particles there. And sometimes I see particles there. The entire dogma, because it's dogma, we know it's true, of the real presence, which is also there in particles, is undermined by the treatment of the Eucharist when it's not treated with the proper reverence. Okay, anyway, didn't mean to go off there. Back to Poland. So anyway, but that's why they're treating this. Poland kept the kind of old-fashioned faith pretty well because it was under communism. I went to Warsaw. I don't remember when it was. It was probably about, I don't know, maybe 2004 or something. And it was incredible because we were just in a hotel in town, and around the corner was a little parish, a little church. They were like on every street corner almost. And I look at the mass schedule because I want to go to mass the next morning. It's just a little chapel, but the size of it's a small church. Mass schedule: 6:30 a.m., 7, 7:30 a.m., 8, 8:30 a.m., 9, 9:30 a.m. Then maybe it skipped till like 11:30 a.m. or something. It was really beautiful to see the way the faith had been held on to. Anyway, so we were in Poland. So anyway, the priest is horrified that he's dropped the host. He places it in this silver vessel with water that the priest has used to wash their fingers after distributing communion, and then places then the sister takes that vessel and places it in the safe where chalices are kept. A week later, the sister opens the safe and finds the host almost dissolved, but with some strange red clots in the center. She immediately calls the priest to show them what was discovered. The host was mostly dissolved, and only a small piece, very small piece of the consecrated bread was left, tightly interconnected to the substance that appeared on the surface. Okay, so here we have a very small piece. I'm talking about the close-up, obviously. You see a very small piece of the host there. That's obviously the ivory and yellow. That is connected to the red clot. Tightly interconnected to the substance that appeared on the surface. The substance that appeared on the surface turning out to be human blood and human muscle tissue. The pastor contacted the archbishop, who, together with the chancellor of the curia, priests and professors, all examined the host. And then, beginning in January of 2009, the miracle happened in October of 2008. So about whatever that is, 4 months later, the curia of the diocese of Białystok asked 2 eminent specialists in pathological anatomy at the Medical University of Białystok, Professor Maria Elizabeta Sabaniak-Lotoszka and Professor Stanislaw Sokolka, to analyze the samples of the blood-stained host. So these are 2 specialists in pathological anatomy at the university. Okay, these aren't superstitious peasants here. Here they are in their lab coats, okay? Professor Sokolka and Professor Sabaniak-Lotoszka. Okay, so on January the 5th, Professor Lotoszka went to Sokolka and took from the corporal a minuscule sample of the mysterious substance present in the host. That's the mysterious substance present in the host. They issued a declaration which states, the sample sent for evaluation looks like myocardial tissue. Okay, again, that's muscle tissue from the heart. Well, I might as well put the professors back up. Obviously, on the left there, you have the monstrance that shows the fragment that is zoomed in on the right. The professors at the university had underlined that in the case of the examined host, the sample, they have found numerous biomorphological indicators typical of cardiac muscle tissue, that's myocardium, such as, for example, the phenomenon of segmentation, namely damage to the fibers of the tissue of the cardiac muscle in the section where communicating junctions, structures characteristic of the cardiac muscle, are found, and the phenomenon of fragmentation. Such damages are visible in the form of numerous small lesions. These alterations can be observed only in fibers that were alive and show signs of the fast spasms of the cardiac muscle, typical of the extreme phase preceding death. So let me just underline that a little bit. You see, in all of these Eucharistic miracles, it's not just human blood. Dayenu, it would have been enough for us if it was just human blood. It's not just human blood, with human DNA and the blood type AB positive, just like the Shroud of Turin and Lanciano and all the other Eucharistic miracles. Dayenu, that's Hebrew for it, would have been enough for us. It would have been enough for us. It's not just human blood with human DNA of type AB positive and human heart muscle from the left ventricle always. It would have been enough for us. But on top of that, we have details of the passion. We have the fact that the person it came from was having trouble breathing, remember? We have the fact that he had received a heavy blow to his chest, remember? And in this case, we have the fact that he was suffering fast spasms of the heart muscle, typical of the extreme phase preceding death. Okay, so we have all of these graphic pictures of Jesus' last moment on the cross in the Eucharist. Remember, this is a substance of the Eucharist. Every time at Mass we receive the Eucharist, the accident, the superficial appearance remains that of the wafer. The substance turns into Jesus' flesh and blood, heart muscle and blood, from the last moments before he expired in his agony. Get it? Get it? Wow. Okay. These alterations can be observed only in fibers that were alive, and they show signs of the fast spasms of the cardiac muscle, typical of the extreme phase preceding death. The two scientists of Bialystok declared, quote, "Some signs that can correspond to nodes of the contractions have been observed on the section of several fibers. Instead, during the analysis with the electron microscope, the outlines of the communicating junctions and the thin filaments of the myofibrils were visible. Moreover, the cardiac tissue was joined to the consecrated host in an inseparable manner." Okay, in another description I read, the cells, because I think I saw this, I saw a photograph of the electron microscope photograph or screen. The cells morphed from the wafer cells to the human muscle tissue cells. Here it's described as the cardiac tissue was joined to the consecrated host in an inseparable manner. In the final report of the examination performed by Professor Letoshka and Professor Sokolka, we find written, quote, "The material resulted was sufficient for the examination. It indicates that it is cardiac muscle tissue." The host remained in the water for a long time and remained in the corporal for an even longer period of time, yet the tissue that appeared on the host would therefore have had to undergo the process of autolysis, namely the process of self-destruction by the action of the intracellular enzymes. In other words, being in the water would have started this process of destruction of the tissue. In the material analyzed, there was not, however, observed any traces of these alterations. In other words, the changes which naturally would take place from the tissue being in water. Okay, so there you have Sokolka. And here you have, let us reverence, so to speak, bow down and reverence the Eucharistic miracle being carried in procession, in a Eucharistic procession in Sokolka. So let me go on to another one in Poland, more recent, which is, oh, I'm getting exhausted. Which is Legnica, 2013. Excuse me. So let me read the description. Let me see what I have for slides of this. Okay. I will read the description while I'm showing you a detail of the host involved. In St. Hyacinth's Church in Legnica, during Holy Mass on December 25th, 2013, on Christmas, a host accidentally fell on the ground during distribution of communion. It was immediately placed in a container with water and closed in the tabernacle. The priest said that on January 4th, so about 10 days later, along with other priests, he went to see if the consecrated host had dissolved in the water after nearly 2 weeks. Quote, this is the priest, now direct quote from him. Immediately we noticed that the host had not dissolved and that a red spot covering a fifth of its surface had appeared. We decided to inform the bishop, who established a special theological scientific commission to analyze the event. The sample was taken directly by the scientists on January 26, 2014. The Wrocław Forensic Medicine Institute, again, Forensic Medicine Institute, CSI Miami, immediately excluded the presence of any bacteria or fungi that could have caused the host to turn red. That's one of the things the skeptics sometimes claim. A second histopathological analysis pointed out that some fragments seemed to belong to myocardial tissue, yet again, heart muscle tissue. An additional opinion was sought, using some samples, at the Institute of Forensic Medicine in Szczecin, without specifying where the samples came from. The Institute used a different analysis method. So you see, this is really being done scientifically, respecting almost the double-blind system, where you don't tell the scientist where this is coming from, so he can't be biased. After the analysis, the Pomeranian Medical University's Department of Histopathology in Szczecin announced that, quote, tissue fragments containing fragmented parts of cross-striated muscle was found in the histopathological image. This is similar to, quote, human heart muscle with alterations that often appear during the death agony. The genetic researches indicate the human origin of the tissue, for human DNA was found. The results of the analysis were presented to the Vatican's Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, which recognized the supernatural nature of the event. It is striking that the examination results, the DNA found, was similar to the DNA found in the Lanciano Eucharistic miracle of the 8th century AD and other miracles that occurred recently, including Sokolka in 2008 in Poland, Tixtla in 2006 in Mexico, and Buenos Aires in Argentina in 1996. On April 17, 2016, following the instructions received by the Holy See, Monsignor Zbigniew Kienokowskiego, the new bishop of Legnica, for my Polish, announced during Mass that the parish priest should prepare a suitable place for the exhibition of the precious relic, so that the faithful can express their adoration properly. So this Eucharistic miracle got the imprimatur, got the attestation that it was truly miraculous from the Vatican. So let me, okay, here's a slide of the Eucharistic miracle, essentially as it was first found, on the host, you know, in the silver vessel, in water. And then you saw the close-up of, whoops. You saw the close-up of it there. And here is one of the scientists involved in the scientific analysis, doctor and cardiologist Professor Barbara Engel, who gave a press conference. There's a photo of her in the press conference, during which she said the material was analyzed using ultraviolet rays with an orange filter, and the results were univocal. In other words, spoke with a single voice. They were unanimous. We have identified myocardial fibers typical of the myocardial tissue, heart muscle tissue, with alterations that often appear during the agony, during the death agony. So, how much more of this do you need? Do you guys have the faith yet? Okay. Okay. Only one left. Only one left. Bear with me. I might actually end on time. Now, this is a little different category. Let me pull myself up so that since I'm talking, I should probably pull myself up, but that one's dead. So let me pull myself up here. Okay. Now, this one's very special to me because I was there. I lived in Boston at the time. I know that at least one of you, I don't know if you're watching live now, but one of my usual live watchers is in the Boston area. This is little Audrey. I don't know if any of you have heard of little Audrey in Worcester, Massachusetts. She passed away maybe about 10 years ago now, but she was a very miraculous little girl. I'll tell the story of little Audrey. But in any case, she was sort of a victim soul. I'll tell her whole story. But lots of things happened around her. Her mother set up a chapel in their house. Priests would come all the time and celebrate Mass there. I went there a lot. I had lots of sneaky ways of getting in. And I end up actually becoming friends with the mother and the father. Sneaky. It's okay. I'll mention maybe a little of it. But anyway, lots of Eucharistic miracles happened while priests were celebrating Mass there. I'm tempted to say dozens of Eucharistic miracles. At least a half a dozen, but probably dozens. Anyway, so I'll get into the story. But it's very special to me because I was there a lot. I saw the stuff. I spent time with little Audrey. I spent time with her parents. I spent time alone in the room with the Eucharistic miracles. And another miracle, actually, when I get to it, I'll tell the story of that. But I was present at a lot of this stuff happening. Okay, the story of little Audrey. There is a picture of little Audrey, as most people who visited her saw her, so to speak. Let me read the story of little Audrey. Little Audrey, Worcester, Massachusetts. Audrey Marie Santo was born in Worcester, Massachusetts on December 19, 1983. On August 9, 1987, when she was 3 years old, she fell into the family swimming pool and almost drowned. She was rushed to a nearby hospital where she was stabilized and then taken to UMass Medical Center, where she was accidentally overdosed with phenobarbital. The reason she was in this state, it looks like a coma. Let me actually see if I can be present in this. Let's see. No, I can't. Okay. Okay. Hold on a second. Bear with me a moment. Okay, I can't be present, so I'm just going to have to go back to a shot, a normal shot. Okay. Sorry about that. She was in that condition. It looks like a coma. It wasn't a coma. It was actually a state of like full paralysis. But she was very conscious. But she couldn't move any muscles, except to some extent, I think she could move her eyes. But she was aware of everything going on around her. She could hear and everything. She just couldn't move. Anyway, I'll get into that more. So anyway, it came about through her being overdosed with phenobarbital. It was actually not the drowning that almost killed her. It was the medical treatment. The overdose caused her to lapse into a coma-like state called akinetic mutism. Akinetic, you can't move, which meant that she had very limited body movement. Medical professionals told the family that they needed to place her in an institution where she could live out the remaining days of her short life. Her mother's faithful response to them was simply, "I shall place her in my arms." They predicted that she would not live more than 2 weeks. I met the mother. She was a short Portuguese Catholic woman, very stubborn, very strong-willed. Anyway, Audrey came home from the hospital in November of 1987, 4 months after her accident. Her family immediately set about working around the clock with relatives and medical staff to close watch that all of Audrey's needs were met and that she received the very best of care. It meant 24/7 skilled nursing at her bedside, by the way. After an outpouring of prayer, Audrey's mother, Linda, made arrangements to bring her daughter to Medjugorje. I'll skip the Medjugorje story. During an apparition, I won't skip it entirely. During an apparition of Our Lady in Medjugorje, little Audrey appeared lively, shaking her head yes, and then fell into cardiac arrest and almost died. She was taken to Medjugorje on a special stretcher with an oxygen tank and all this other life support equipment, okay? Anyway, she kind of woke up during the apparition. She was seen shaking her head yes, in a lively fashion, and then had a cardiac arrest and almost died. Anyway, she was brought back home, and at that point, miracles began to happen. Statues of the Virgin Mary began to weep tears of blood. Oil began to exude from statues and holy images, and many people were healed of their illnesses. On 5 different occasions, when the Holy Mass was being celebrated in Audrey's home, many people witnessed the host in the celebrant's hands beginning to bleed. Audrey was unable to swallow because of her condition and was being fed via feeding tubes. And yet, it is remarkable that on the day of her first Holy Communion and every day after that, she was able to receive our Lord in the Holy Eucharist without any difficulty, because she was unable to swallow. But somehow she could swallow the host. It was also during Bishop Flanagan's Mass in Audrey's home that the first Eucharistic miracle of the bleeding host took place. Okay? So it wasn't some local, no-name priest. It was the bishop during the consecration that the first bleeding host miracle took place. Audrey's family had been given permission to have the Blessed Sacrament in a tabernacle in her room. Thus, she was in the continuous presence of our Lord in the Holy Eucharist. By the way, they had so many of these miraculous Eucharists that the tabernacle in her room was kind of full of them. I was privileged to be alone in her room with her and the tabernacle for a while. That's why this made such a strong impression on me. But of all of these phenomena, by far the most wonderful of all was that hearts were changed and conversions took place. Okay, now I'll tell a couple of other things. As I said, I hung out there a lot. I heard a lot of stories. People used to come and pray in her presence, to be healed. She used to get the symptoms of the person who was sick, and the person would get healed. And I don't remember all of them, but I remember one, which is very curious, which was a young man who had cancer prayed in her presence to be healed from the cancer. And little Audrey suffered the chemotherapy effects. In other words, the young man was healed of his cancer, and little Audrey suffered for a number of weeks the effects of going through a chemotherapy treatment for cancer. There was another young man, if I remember the story right, who had a motorcycle accident and had a bad leg fracture. I don't remember all the details, but so I shouldn't tell the story. Anyway, there are videos about little Audrey, and I'm sure there are accounts of a lot of these miracles. I have a bad memory, and this was about 30 years ago. But I remember being there. It was shortly after Easter, and they were excited because one of the Eucharistic miracles that took place was actually that the chalice with the precious blood had actually turned into gall. Remember Jesus on the cross, they gave me gall to drink, or wine tainted with gall to drink, gall and vinegar to drink, whatever that line is. And when the priest went to drink from the chalice, it was horribly bitter. And I guess they had it analyzed, and it turned out it was gall. So anyway, I've babbled a lot. So let me go back to little Audrey. So there is little Audrey. She lived until 23. I think she was 23 years old when she died. And there were like tens of thousands at her funeral mass. Near the end, the masses would be held in a stadium in Worcester, because there'd be tens of thousands of people, and she would be there. She'd be there on a gurney like that. But there's little Audrey. And I'll tell you how I got in the house so often. Was the one exception. It was very hard to get in the house. They'd have like a mass, I don't know what it was, maybe like once a month when outsiders could come. And but the exception was, if a priest came, the priest was always welcome to celebrate Mass in their chapel. They had converted the garage into a chapel. Let me show you the house. Okay, very humble house. Anyways, it's in Worcester, which is actually a pretty working class area. You see the kind of red addition on the far left. That's the garage. That was a garage. You can see the driveway going up to it. They converted the garage into a chapel. And if you showed up there with a priest, you were welcome. The priest was welcome, and they had to tolerate you because you showed up with the priest, and the priest could celebrate Mass in the chapel. So once I discovered that, I roped in every priest I knew to go out there over and over and over again. So I went out there probably 4 or 5 times with different priest friends of mine in order to get into the house. And then also I worked on a Catholic TV show called Fatima Today. Some of the episodes are up on my YouTube channel. This is a long time ago when I still had hair, actually, and a black beard. And so I did a show on them. So I got good to go out there and, with a camera and interview them and stuff. So I basically ingratiated myself over time. So there is the house. There's little Audrey close up. I'm just going to go through these slides quickly. I hope not too quickly. There is her room. And you see the relic case with all of those relics up on the wall. And you see little Audrey in her bed, in the tubes. I think she actually was intubated. And if I remember correctly, there was a tabernacle at the foot of her bed. And let's see, I'm looking at the chat stream. Send me a chat if any of you have been to little Audrey's or have know about the story. There is the little chapel made out of the garage with 2 priests celebrating Mass. And the chapel is covered, of course, with statues and pictures. And let's see what we have here. There is a picture taken from the back of the chapel. Now, I'm going to tell you my stupid little miracle story from there. I saw all this stuff happening. I saw all the statues weeping oil and everything. I certainly saw all the Eucharistic miracles. Let me pull up a slide showing, since it's supposed to be about the Eucharistic miracles. Okay, there are a bunch. You see how many? It happened a lot. Those are all hosts that were being consecrated in the chapel at Little Audrey's that resulted in Eucharistic miracles. You know, blood spots in the center of the host and so forth. There is, I actually believe that's the bishop, but I'm not 100% sure. There is one of the Eucharistic miracles there in a monstrance, you know, being, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the correct word, by being presented for veneration, for worship. There is another Eucharistic miracle in a smaller monstrance. As I said, all of these Eucharistic miracles took place there. There is one of the Eucharistic miracles from there in another little, I guess that's a Luna from a monstrance. So, there is another set of Eucharistic miracles. There might be some overlap between that and the other slide I showed. And let's see what we have here. Here is a statue of that's dripping oil. You know, when I was there for Mass, there was oil all over the place. Yeah, of course, I don't know the story. In other words, yeah, of course, that could be fraudulent. Of course, poor Linda Santo, the mother, might have surreptitiously gone out there and somehow done it, although she was never in the chapel before the Mass and the oil wasn't there before the Mass started, so I don't know how she would have done it. You know, of course, that's not going to satisfy a skeptic, but nonetheless, in context, it's pretty undeniable. There is oil dripping from a statue of Jesus in the chapel. And now I'm going to go back to my little miracle. Now, here's the story. I was there for a Mass. It was a crowded Mass. I'm sorry, you guys are really lucky you don't know me personally, because I'm the obnoxious person who always wants to sit in the front pew at Mass or the front row at Mass so that nothing distracts me. I know it's very selfish, but I come by naturally because Jesus said it. Do you remember in the Gospels? Jesus actually said that the Jews like the front seats in the synagogues, so I come by naturally. So anyway, hold on a second. Let me figure out how I can do this. Okay, maybe I can actually do this. Bear with me a moment. Okay, there we go. There we go. I just made myself a little bigger. So anyway, so I was in a chair in the front for the Mass. But then more and more people came, including people with mobility problems, you know, old ladies with canes and stuff like that. So I gave up my prize folding chair in the front of the chapel. And I sat in the back against the wall on the floor because I was, you know, pretty young. I was sitting under, I don't care if you don't believe me, okay? I was sitting under a shag rug, like a raya rug of Padre Pio celebrating Mass. There in the back, you see in the chapel a framed picture of Padre Pio celebrating Mass. It was the same picture, I believe, but I don't remember it as a framed picture. I remember it as a raya rug, as a shag rug. I don't want to bet my salvation on that because, again, it was like 30 years ago. That's how I remember it, but maybe it was that picture. But it couldn't have been that picture because it was, I think it was a rug. Oh, it wasn't a shag rug. Now I remember it. It was like a tapestry. Yeah, now I actually do remember. And there was nothing underneath it. So it was just the rug and bare wall and then me leaning against the wall. Okay. Anyway, you know, I'm there for the Mass. I get up, I receive communion. I go back to my place, and my pants are soaked. The back, they're dockers, cotton pants. My tuchus of my pants, the back waistband down to where you sit is soaked with oil. And I look up, and oil was dripping from the tapestry, from the rug of Padre Pio down the wall. And because I had been leaning against the wall sitting there, it has soaked into my pants. So anyway, what did I do? When I got home, because when you used to go there, they would give you little plastic bags with little cotton, a little tuft of cotton, which was soaked in the miraculous oil which came from these statues. So when I got back home, I cut up my dockers, the part that was soaked with oil, into little 1-inch squares and put them in little baggies and gave them to people who wanted miraculous oil from little Audrey's. So that's my story of little Audrey's. So anyway, I don't have here the, she also had the stigmata. By the way, she developed the stigmata, and she died in 2007. And a year later, the bishop of the Diocese of Worcester recognized her cause, the Foundation for the Promotion of the Cause for the Beatification and Canonization of Audrey Marie Santo. Save those pants. Yes, I did save those pants, but I actually, somewhere I still have a couple of little squares from those pants. Anyway, so she did die, and there is her grave in Worcester. So, looks like I did manage to end at pretty much the normal time. Okay, I see I'm not the only one who likes to sit in the front to be recollected. Okay, so that's it. Eucharistic Miracles. That's what the show was about. I should bring myself back if I have a screen here. Okay. That's what the show was about. And some of the stuff, maybe the oil coming from the statues, a skeptic could say, oh yeah, you're kind of a credulous fool to believe that. I respect that, because I don't know that they didn't have little secret, I don't know how you would do it, little secret, rubber bulbs inside the statues. Of course, but anyway, who knows? But look at all the professors, look at all the forensic institutes, look at all the examinations when they didn't know what the source was, look at all the electron microscope results, look at the same blood type. No, maybe I can find a G.K. Chesterton quote quickly. Okay, I'll close with G.K. Chesterton and a prayer. The believers in miracles accept them, rightly or wrongly, because they have evidence for them. I think we saw an overwhelming weight of evidence today. The disbelievers in miracles deny them, rightly or wrongly, because they have a doctrine against them. Clearly, that's what's going on. And I guess that's here. Another Chesterton quote. I didn't believe in the Catholic Church because something pointed to it. I believed it because everything pointed to it. Which was another reason for doing the show on Eucharistic Miracles, because of course the fact that evolution doesn't work and there's no explanation for life, that points to God being for real, right? Miraculous healings point to God being for real. Eucharistic Miracles zoom in, focus in on the dogmas of the Catholic faith, right? They're direct verifications of the very specific truths of the Catholic faith. Protestants can buy into creation, that God, there has to be a God to create things. Hindus can buy into medically miraculous healings. There are plenty of occultists and New Agers and stuff that have medically miraculous healings. They usually don't last, by the way. That seems to be a difference. But nonetheless, there are things that can't be explained materialistically that, occur with Hindu gurus and occur with New Age practitioners and so forth. But Eucharistic miracles, come on. Eucharistic miracles point to only one truth, and that's the dogma of the Catholic faith. So, let me close with a Our Father, Hail Mary, and Glory Be on general principles. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Now, because I'm a hopeless pedant, I'll point out two things in the underlying Greek and Latin of the Our Father. One is that give us this day our daily bread can be credibly translated as give us our supersubstantial bread or supernatural bread. You can look that up. Apparently there's evidence in the Greek for that translation. And deliver us from evil, I think, is pretty unambiguously more closely translated as deliver us from the evil one. I think, or maybe it's totally ambiguous. I'm not a Greek or Latin scholar. But in any case, I do attest to the fact that both of those translations are at least equally legitimate. Give us this day our supernatural bread, the Eucharist, and deliver us from the evil one. On to the Hail Mary. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Thank you for watching. Watch again next time. Subscribe to the channel and ask for notifications. Hit the bell, and you'll be notified. And I'm going to have a different background next show because I'm not going to be home. So, but I hope I'll be able to do it on the same schedule by late next week. Thanks for watching. A zillion times over. This is the high point of my weeks is doing these shows. So thanks for watching, and thanks for being there. By the way, I'm glad that all of you watch, in the recordings, but it's really a treat to feel the live presence of the people watching on the live stream also, and to follow the chats a little bit. So with that, I hate to say goodbye, but it's time to say goodbye. So bye for now. I think it was up on the screen, but the music is again from Harpa Dei. They have a YouTube channel, and they're always putting up new stuff. They're like me because of the lockdown business. They're locked down at their monastery in Germany. Usually they're on the road giving live, not really concerts, but performing music for prayer at parishes. But now they're trapped in their monasteries, so a couple of times a week they put up new live music. They do the chants for the offices and stuff live. So check out their YouTube station too, their YouTube, whatever you call it, channel. It's Harpa Dei, Harp of God, HARPADEI. Anyway, so, and that's the music. So let me do the closing screen, and finally say goodbye before the hook comes to take me off screen. Bye for now.
Angelingua gloriosi corporis mysterium sanguinisque preciosi, quem in mundi pretium, fructus ventris generosi, rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status nobis natus, ex intacta Virgine, et in mundo conversatus, sparso verbis semine, sui moras incollatus, miracles et ordine.
In supreme nocte cene, recumbens cum fratribus, observata lege plene, civis in legalibus, cibum turber ordine, sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum, ergo carnem efficit, fitque sanguis Christi merum, et si sensus deficit, ad firmandum cor sincerum, sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui, et antiquum documentum novo cedat ritui. Prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque, laus et jubilatio, salus honor virtus quoque, sit et benedictio, procedenti ab utroque, comparsit laudatio.
Pangelingua gloriosi, corporis mysterium, sanguinisque preciosi, quem in mundi pretium, fructus ventris generosi, rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status nobis natus, ex intacta Virgine, et in mundo conversatus, sparso verbis semine, sui moras incollatus, miracles et ordine.
In supreme nocte cene, recumbens cum fratribus, observata lege plene, civis in legalibus, cibum turbe ordine, sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum, ergo carnem efficit, fitque sanguis Christi merum, et si sensus deficit, affirmandum cor sincerum, sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui, et antiquum documentum novo cedat ritui. Prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque, laus et jubilatio, salus honor virtus quoque, sit et benedictio, procedenti ab utroque, comparsit laudatio.
Pange lingua gloriosi, corporis mysterium, sanguinisque preciosi, quem in mundi pretium, fructus ventris generosi, Rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status nobis natus, ex intacta Virgine, et in mundo conversatus, sparso verbis semine, sui moras incollatus, miro clausitor vine.
In supreme nocte cene, recumbens cum fratribus, observata lege plene, civis in legalibus, cibum turbe ordine, sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum, ergo carnem efficit, fitque sanguis Christi merum, et si sensus deficit, ad sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui, et antiquum documentum novo cerat ritui. Prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque, laus et jubilatio, salus honor virtus quoque, sit et benedictio, procedenti ab utroque, comparsit laudatio.
Pangelingua gloriosi corporis mysterium sanguinisque preciosi quem in mundi precium fructus ventris generosi Rexe furit gentium.
Nobis status, nobis natus, ex intacta Virgine, et in mundo conversatus, sparso verbis semine, sui moras incollatus, miro clausit ordine.
In supreme nocte cene, recumbens cum fratribus, observata lege plene, cibis in legalibus, cibum turber ordine, sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum, ergo carnem efficit, fitque sanguis Christi merum, et si sensus deficit, ad firmandum cor sincerum, sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui, et antiquum documentum novo cerat ritui. Prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque, laus et jubilatio, salus honor virtus quoque, sit et benedictio.
Pangelingua gloriosi corporis mysterium sanguinisque preciosi quem in mundi pretium fructus ventris generosi rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status nobis natus ex intacta Virgine et in mundo conversatus sparso verbis semine sui moras incolatus miro clausit ordine
In supreme nocte cene recumbens cum fratribus observata lege plene civis in legalibus cibum turbe ordine sedat suis manibus.
verbum caro panem verum ergo carnem efficit fitque sanguis Christi merum et si sensus deficit ad firmandum cor sincerum sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui et antiquum documentum novo cerat ritui prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque laus et jubilatio salus honor virtus quoque sit et benedictio procedenti ab utroque comparsit laudatio.
Pangelingua gloriosi corporis mysterium sanguinisque preciosi quem in mundi pretium fructus ventris generosi rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status nobis natus ex intacta Virgine et in mundo conversatus sparso verbis semine sui mora
supreme nocte cene, recumbens cum fratribus, observata lege plene, civis in legalibus, cibum turbe ordine, sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum, ergo carnem efficit, fitque sanguis Christi merum, itsis sensus deficit, ad firmandum cor sincerum, sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui, et antiquum documentum novo cedat ritui. Prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque, laus et jubilatio, salus honor virtus quoque, sit et benedictio, procedenti ab utroque, comparsit laudatio.
Pangelingua gloriosi, corporis mysterium, sanguinisque preciosi, quem in mundi precium, fructus ventris generosi, Rexe furit gentium.
Nobis status, nobis natus, ex intacta Virgine, et in mundo conversatus, sparso verbis semine, incollatus, miro clausit ordine.
In supreme nocte cene, recumbens cum fratribus, observata lege plene, civis in legalibus, cibum turbe ordine, sedat suis manibus.
Verbum caro panem verum, ergo carnem efficit, fitque sanguis Christi merum, itsis sensus deficit, ad
sacramentum veneremur cernui et antiquum documentum novo cerat ritui prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque laus et jubilatio salus honor virtus quoque sit et benedictio procedenti ab utroque comparsit laudatio.
Pangelingua gloriosi corporis mysterium sanguinisque preciosi quem in mundi precium fructus ventris generosi rex effurit gentium.
Nobis status nobis natus ex intacta Virgine et in mundo conversatus sparso verbis semine sui moras incolatus miro clausit ordine
In supreme nocte cene recumbens cum fratribus observata lege plene cibis in legalibus cibum turber ordine sedat suis manibus
verbum caro panem verum ergo carnem efficit fitque sanguis Christi merum et si sensus deficit ad firmandum cor sincerum sola fide sufficit.
Tantum ergo sacramentum veneremur cernui et antiquum documentum novo cerat ritui prestet fide supplementum sensum defectui.
Genitori genitoque laus et jubilatio salus honor virtus quoque sit et benedictio procedenti
Pangelingua gloriosi corporis mysterium sanguinisque preciosi quem in mundi pretium fructus ventris generosi Rex effurit gentium
Nobis status nobis